Some stories find us when we least expect them. This one came to me through a friend in Minnesota, a tale about a winter night, a door that almost stayed closed, and a dog who had walked as far as she could walk. I share it now because I believe it speaks to something many of us understand: the quiet fear of being forgotten, and the stubborn hope that keeps us scratching at doors anyway. If you have ever felt invisible, or wondered if anyone would come when you called, this story is for you. The scratch came at 2:17 in the morning. Margaret Thompson sat alone in the dark living room, nursing home brochures spread across the kitchen table behind her. She had not turned on a lamp in 3 days, had not answered the phone, had not opened the curtains. The scratch came again, faint, polite, almost apologetic. She did not move. Wind shrieked across the frozen fields of Kearney County, Minnesota, February, 18 degrees below zero with wind chill, the kind of cold that killed. A third scratch, weaker now. Margaret's hand found the armrest of Harold's chair empty 6 months now, still positioned to see the bird feeder he had built, the one she had forgotten to fill since October. She pushed herself up. Her knees protested. Her heart protested louder. The porch light had burned out in November. She had not replaced it. She opened the door to darkness. 2 brown eyes looked up at her, exhausted, desperate. And beneath the matted fur and the ice and the blood on cracked paws, a belly swollen with life, waiting to be born. If this story has found you tonight, I would love to know where you are listening from. Drop your city or state below. It warms my heart to know we are sharing this moment together, like neighbors on a long winter evening. The dog did not move, did not wag, did not whimper. She stood on the porch, or tried to. Her rear legs trembled. Ice clung to the fur along her spine in jagged ridges. The belly hung low, heavy, stretched tight with what Margaret knew without counting 6 puppies, maybe 7, close to term, days away, if that. German shepherd, young, 3 years old, maybe less. Margaret's eyes traced the scars, a raised white line across the muzzle, a notch in the right ear, healed rough. The left rear leg bent, wrong, an old break, never set properly. Someone had done this, someone who was supposed to love her. The wind cut through Harold's Carhartt jacket, the one she had grabbed from the hook without thinking. It still smelled like him. Coffee, WD-40, the faint ghost of pipe tobacco he had quit in 1995. "Well," Margaret said, her voice cracked. She had not spoken aloud in 2 days. "You coming in or not?" The dog looked at the doorway, looked at Margaret. Something flickered in those brown eyes. Calculation, maybe, or memory. How many doors had she tried before this one? She limped across the threshold. Margaret guided her to the kitchen, linoleum floor, easier to clean. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Harold had meant to fix that. He had meant to fix a lot of things. She filled a bowl with lukewarm water, not cold. Shock risk, 40 years of farm knowledge, buried under 6 months of sitting in the dark. Rose up like muscle memory. The dog drank. Slow. Careful, like she had forgotten how. Margaret lowered herself to the floor. Her knees screamed. Her back would punish her for days afterward. She did not care. On the kitchen table behind her, the brochures. Sunrise Senior Living. Pictures of smiling, gray-haired women playing bingo. Her son's handwriting on a post-it note. Just read it. Mom, please. Nathan, Seattle, software engineer, good job, good wife, good reasons for not visiting. 3 days ago, his voice on the phone, Mom, we need to talk about the house. You can't stay there alone. The dog finished drinking, moved to the corner, lay down with her back against the wall. Watching the door. Margaret watched her. Two creatures in a kitchen at 3 a.m., both waiting for something, both unsure if it would come. Then the dog's body tensed. A low sound rose from her throat. Not pain, not yet, but close. Margaret's stomach dropped. The puppies were not days away. They were coming now. Margaret's hands moved before her mind caught up. Towels? She needed towels. Clean ones. The linen closet in the hallway, 3 steps. 4. Her fingers found the stack of old bath towels, the ones Harold used to dry the dogs after rain. She had not touched them in years. Back to the kitchen. The dog's breathing had changed. Shallow, rapid. Her sides heaved. Margaret dropped to her knees on the linoleum. The cold shot through her joints. She spread the towels in a nest around the dog's hindquarters. "Easy now," she whispered. "Easy." The dog's eyes found hers, held them. A low whine escaped her throat. Margaret placed her palm against the swollen belly, felt the movement beneath rolling, shifting, urgent. But something was wrong. The contraction she expected, the rhythmic tightening, had stopped. The dog's body had gone rigid, locked in a holding pattern, false labor, or the beginning of real labor, stalled by fear. Margaret had seen this before. 30 years ago, a heifer in the barn, too young, too scared, body fighting itself. Harold had sat with her through the night, talking low, keeping her calm until nature took over. Harold was not here now. Margaret settled onto the floor beside the dog. Her hip protested. Her lower back sent a sharp warning. She ignored it. "I know," she said quietly. "I know you're scared, but you're not alone anymore. Not tonight." The dog watched her. Did not move. Did not relax. Margaret did not reach for her. Did not push. She simply sat there, breathing slowly, letting her presence fill the silence. Minutes passed. 10, 20. The kitchen clock ticked above the stove, the same clock that had hung there since 1987, the one Nathan had learned to read time on. The dog's breathing began to slow. The rigid muscles along her spine softened, degree by degree. At some point, Margaret did not know when the dog's head moved, lowered, came to rest against Margaret's thigh. Margaret held her breath. The dog did not pull away. Outside. The wind had died. The world beyond the kitchen window was white and still. The snow settling into drifts against the barn Harold had painted red every 5 years. The last coat fading now because no one had painted it since. Margaret's hand moved slowly, found the dog's ear, stroked it once, twice. The fur was still damp, still cold. But beneath it, warmth, life. "Luna," Margaret said. The name came without thinking. "That's what I'll call you. You came in the moonlight." Luna's ear twitched, maybe listening, maybe dreaming. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. The radio on the counter played low the farm report. Same station Harold had listened to for 40 years. Margaret's eyes grew heavy. She did not remember falling asleep. When she opened her eyes, gray light filled the kitchen. Morning. The snow had stopped. Through the window, the first pink streaks of sunrise touched the empty fields. Luna had not moved. Her head still rested against Margaret's leg. Her breathing was deep now, steady. The crisis had passed for now. Margaret's body screamed as she shifted, every joint locked, every muscle stiff. 71 years old, sleeping on a linoleum floor. Harold would have laughed at her. She would be paying for this for days. She pushed herself up slowly. Luna lifted her head, watching. In the morning light, the dog's condition was worse than Margaret had realized. The frostbite on the ear tips had blackened at the edges. The paw pads were cracked deep, some bleeding fresh, and the old scars the muzzle, The ear. The crooked rear leg told a story that made Margaret's stomach turn. Someone had hurt this dog, not once, not by accident, repeatedly, deliberately. And then they had thrown her away. Margaret looked at the kitchen table, the nursing home brochures, Nathan's handwriting. Just read it. Mom. She looked at Luna. 2 creatures, both discarded by the people who should have kept them. Both waiting for someone else to decide their fate. Margaret walked to the table, picked up the brochures, carried them to the trash can by the back door. She did not throw them away, not yet, but she set them on the counter beside it. I need to get you to a vet, she said to Luna. Those paws need attention, and those puppies we need to know how close. Luna's tail moved. Once, twice. The first wag since she had arrived. Margaret found her keys on the hook by the door. Her truck sat in the driveway, covered in snow. She had not driven it since November, since the funeral, since the world had shrunk to the size of this kitchen and Harold's empty chair. The engine might not start. The roads might be impassable. She might slide into a ditch and freeze to death 20 miles from town. She pulled on Harold's Carhartt jacket, found her gloves, opened the back door. Luna stood, limped toward her, ready to follow wherever Margaret led. All right, Margaret said. Let's see if this old truck remembers how to run. She stepped onto the porch. The cold hit her face like a slap. The snow came up past her ankles, behind her. The phone began to ring. Margaret stopped, turned. The phone rang again, shrill, insistent. She knew who it was, Nathan, calling to check if she had read the brochures. Calling to talk about the house, calling to tell her, gently, reasonably, that she could not live alone anymore. Luna stood in the doorway, watching her. The phone rang a third time. Margaret looked at the truck, looked at the phone. She had a choice to make. Margaret let the phone ring. She walked to the truck, brushed the snow off the driver's side door with her bare hand. She had forgotten her gloves inside. And she was not going back for them now. The metal handle burned cold against her palm. The engine turned over once, twice. Coughed. Died. Come on, Margaret muttered. Come on, you stubborn thing. Third try. The engine caught, sputtered, then roared to life. A cloud of exhaust billowed into the frozen air. Margaret let it idle, walked back to the house. Luna stood in the doorway, watching, her crooked rear leg trembling. Your turn, Margaret said. Let's go. Luna hesitated, looked at the truck, looked at Margaret. Something flickered across her face memory. Maybe. The last time someone had put her in a vehicle, Margaret did not push, did not grab. She simply stood there, holding the door open, waiting. Luna limped forward. 1 step, 2. At the edge of the porch. She stopped, sniffed the air. Then she walked down the steps and climbed into the passenger seat of the truck. Margaret's chest loosened. She had not realized she was holding her breath. The drive to town took 40 minutes, should have taken 20, but the roads were bad unplowed, drifted, treacherous. Margaret gripped the steering wheel with both hands, knuckles white, eyes fixed on the narrow corridor of white that the headlights carved through the morning gray. Luna sat beside her, silent, watching the world pass through the window. Every few minutes, her body tensed a contraction. Margaret guessed, or the memory of one. The puppies were still coming. The question was when. Dr. Eleanor Warren's clinic sat at the edge of town. A low brick building with a hand-painted sign that read Kearney County Veterinary Services in letters that had faded since 1987. Eleanor had been the only vet in the county for 30 years. She and Margaret went back to Methodist Women's Circle, back to church potlucks and funeral casseroles and the quiet solidarity of women who had outlived too many things. The waiting room was empty. Margaret helped Luna through the door, one hand under her belly, supporting the weight. The receptionist, a young woman Margaret did not recognize, looked up from her computer. "I need to see Dr. Warren." Margaret said, "Now?" Eleanor appeared in the doorway to the examination room. 68 years old, silver hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on her nose. Her eyes moved from Margaret to the dog to the swollen belly. "Bring her back," Eleanor said. "No questions. Not yet." The examination table was cold, stainless steel. Luna flinched when Margaret lifted her onto it, but she did not fight, did not snap, just watched with those brown eyes that had seen too much. Eleanor's hands moved with practiced efficiency, palpating the belly, checking the gums, listening to the heartbeat with a stethoscope. "German Shepherd," Eleanor said. "Female, approximately 3 years old, severely malnourished, dehydrated." She paused, fingers probing the rear leg. "Old fracture here. Never set properly. She's been walking on this for at least a year. I found her last night," Margaret said. "On my porch. She just appeared." Eleanor lifted Luna's lip, examined the gums, pale pink, not good, but not critical. "The puppy's 7, I guess, maybe 6. She started contracting last night, then stopped. False labor, I think. Fear." Eleanor nodded, moved her hands along Luna's muzzle, tracing the scar. Her jaw tightened. "Someone hit this dog," she said quietly. "More than once. The scarring pattern, it's consistent with repeated blunt force trauma. And these ribs." She pressed gently along Luna's side. Luna whimpered. "At least 2 healed fractures, old ones." Margaret's hands curled into fists at her sides. "She doesn't have a microchip," Eleanor continued. "Either it was never implanted, or someone removed it. Either way, there's no way to trace her." "Someone threw her away," Margaret said. "Like garbage." Eleanor looked at her, took off her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Margaret, you're 71 years old. You live alone. Harold's been gone 6 months. And now you want to take on a traumatized dog who's about to deliver a litter of puppies. I didn't say I wanted to, but you're going to." Margaret looked at Luna. The dog watched her back. Head resting on the examination table, eyes half closed. Trusting. Despite everything, trusting. "Harold would have done it," Margaret said. "He wouldn't have thought twice. Harold was Harold. You're you. Maybe that's the problem." Eleanor was quiet for a moment, then she almost smiled. "The puppies will come within 48 hours, 72 at most. You'll need clean towels, warm water, a heating pad. Keep her calm. Keep her fed, small meals, high protein, and watch for complications if she's in active labor for more than 2 hours without delivering. Call me immediately." Margaret nodded. "What do I owe you?" "Nothing. Consider it a favor from an old friend." Eleanor paused. "And Margaret, call your son. Whatever's going on between you two, don't let it fester. Life's too short." Margaret did not answer. She helped Luna off the table, guided her back to the truck. The drive home was quieter. The sun had risen fully now, pale and weak behind a veil of clouds. The fields stretched white and empty on either side of the road, the same fields Harold had farmed for 40 years. Now leased to a neighbor who grew soybeans and never waved when he passed. Luna slept in the passenger seat, her head on Margaret's thigh. When Margaret pulled into the driveway, she saw it immediately. A rental car, silver, parked behind her truck. And on the porch, standing with his hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the cold Nathan. He was not supposed to arrive until Saturday. He had come 3 days early, and the look on his face said he had already made up his mind about something. Nathan stepped off the porch as Margaret shut off the engine. He wore a Patagonia jacket, the kind that cost $300 and had never seen real weather. His shoes were wrong for the mud. City shoes, leather soles that would soak through before he reached the truck. Margaret did not move. Her hands stayed on the steering wheel. Luna stirred beside her, lifting her head, ears flattening. Nathan reached the driver's side door, his breath fogged in the cold air. He looked older than the last time she had seen him, thinner, grayer at the temples. 44 years old, and already he had his father's worried lines around the eyes. "Mom?" He opened her door. "I called. You didn't answer. I was busy." His eyes moved past her to Luna. The dog pressed herself against the passenger door, watching him with the wariness of an animal who had learned not to trust. "What is that? Her name is Luna. Found her last night. She's pregnant." Margaret climbed out of the truck, her knees protesting. "Help me get her inside." "Mom, later, Nathan, whatever you came to say. It can wait. Right now. I need to get this dog warm and fed." She walked around to the passenger side, opened the door slowly. Luna watched her, trembling. "Come on, girl. You're safe. Nobody's going to hurt you." Luna did not move. Nathan appeared beside Margaret. Luna's trembling intensified. A low whine escaped her throat. "Step back," Margaret said. "What?" "Step back. You're scaring her." Nathan's jaw tightened, but he moved away. 5 feet, 10. Luna's breathing slowed. She looked at Margaret. Then, slowly, painfully, she climbed out of the truck and limped toward the house. Margaret followed, did not look back at her son. Inside, she guided Luna to the living room. The wood stove had gone cold overnight. She had forgotten to bank the coals. The house was freezing. "I'll start a fire," Nathan said from the doorway. His voice was quieter now, uncertain. "Fine." Margaret settled Luna onto the old blanket she had spread near the stove. The dog circled once, twice, then lay down with a heavy sigh. Her belly rose and fell with each breath. Nathan knelt by the wood stove, crumpled newspaper, kindling, the scrape of a match. Margaret watched his hands, Harold's hands. She had always thought, long fingers, careful movements. The fire caught. Warmth began to seep into the room. Nathan stood, brushed his palms on his jeans, looked at the dog, then at his mother. "You want to tell me what's going on?" Margaret lowered herself into Harold's chair. The leather creaked. It still held the shape of her husband's body, the impression of his shoulders, the worn patches where his elbows had rested. "She showed up last night, 2 a.m, scratching at the door." Margaret's voice was flat, tired. "She'd walked 2, maybe 3 miles through the blizzard. Dr. Warren thinks she found shelter somewhere along the way, an old barn, a culvert, then made the final push to my porch. Someone just abandoned her, left her on the highway in January, middle of a snowstorm." Margaret's hands curled around the armrests. "Dr. Warren says she's been beaten, ribs broken, leg never set right. Someone hurt this dog for years, and then they dumped her like trash." Nathan was quiet. His eyes moved across the room, the empty bird feeder outside the window, the nursing home brochures still stacked on the kitchen table, the Carhartt jacket hanging by the door. "Mom, you can't, what? You can't take care of a pregnant dog. You're 71 years old. You live alone. What happens when those puppies come? What happens if something goes wrong? Then I'll deal with it. How you can barely—" He stopped, pressed his lips together. "Barely what?" "Silence. Say it. Nathan." He exhaled, ran a hand through his hair, the same gesture Harold used to make when he was frustrated. Eleanor called me last week. She said you missed your blood pressure medication twice. She said you've been forgetting things. She said, Eleanor talks too much. She's worried about you. I'm worried about you. Margaret looked at her son, 44 years old, the boy who used to crawl into her bed during thunderstorms, the teenager who could not wait to leave, the man who called every other Sunday now, conversations growing shorter each time. You flew here 3 days early, she said. You didn't come because you're worried about me. You came because you want to sell the house before spring. Nathan's face went still. The realtor told you the market's good right now. Get it listed before April, and you'll get top dollar. Margaret's voice did not waver. That's why you're here. Not for me. For the house. That's not fair. Isn't it? Luna whimpered. Margaret looked at her. The dog's sides were heaving again, another contraction, or the prelude to one. We'll talk about this later, Margaret said. Right now. I need to take care of her. Mom, later. Nathan? She pushed herself out of the chair, walked to the kitchen, began heating broth on the stove. Behind her, she heard Nathan move to the window, heard the creak of the floorboards beneath his feet. They did not speak again that evening. The puppies came 36 hours later. Margaret had not slept more than 2 hours at a stretch. She dozed in Harold's chair, waking every hour to check on Luna, to add wood to the fire, to listen for the change in breathing that would signal the beginning. Her body ached in ways she had forgotten were possible. Her hands trembled when she poured coffee. But she kept moving. She had to keep moving. The labor began at 3:47 a.m. Luna's panting shifted, deepened. Her body began to contract in earnest, not the false starts of 2 nights ago, but the real thing. Rhythmic, purposeful. Margaret knelt beside her, towel spread, warm water in a bowl, heating pad ready. That's it, girl, she murmured. You're doing fine. Just let it happen. Nathan appeared in the doorway. He had been sleeping on the couch, or trying to. The argument hung between them like smoke that would not clear. Is she? It's starting. Stay back. She doesn't need you hovering. He stayed in the doorway, watching. The first puppy came at 4:23 a.m., male, dark sable, the largest of the litter. Luna licked him clean with frantic efficiency, severing the cord, nudging him toward her belly. He latched on, began to nurse. Margaret's hands shook. She had not done this in 30 years, not since the last calving season before they sold the cattle. She had seen Harold do this once with a calf. It did not always work. Her fingers felt thick, clumsy. The second puppy came 20 minutes later, then the third, then the fourth, each one healthy, strong, crying in thin, high voices that filled the living room. The fifth was smaller, weaker. Luna worked harder on this one, licking and nudging, trying to stimulate breathing. Margaret watched, hands ready. The puppy coughed, cried, lived. The sixth came at 6:15 a.m. Margaret knew immediately something was wrong. The puppy did not move, did not cry. Luna licked her, a female, the smallest of the litter, but there was no response. Margaret lifted her, cleared the airway with her finger. The puppy's body was limp, warm, but limp. Come on, Margaret whispered. She rubbed the tiny chest with a towel. Firm, circular motions. Come on now. Breathe. Nothing. Nathan took a step forward. Mom, be quiet. She kept rubbing. 10 seconds. 20. Luna whined, straining to see. 25 seconds. 30. A cough. A gasp. A thin, reedy cry. The puppy breathed. Margaret's vision blurred. She blinked hard, placed the puppy at Luna's belly, watched her latch on. The seventh came at 7:02 a.m., male, Black and tan, strong, the last. Margaret sat back on her heels. Her body ached in ways she had forgotten were possible. Her hands trembled. Her eyes burned. She would sleep for 14 hours straight when this was over. She knew her body would demand it. 7 puppies, all alive. Luna looked at her. Brown eyes, exhausted but clear. Her tail moved. Once, twice. "You did good, girl," Margaret said. Her voice cracked. "You did real good." The days blurred together after that. Nathan stayed. He did not talk about the nursing home, did not mention the house. He slept on the couch, made coffee in the mornings, kept the wood stove burning. He and Margaret moved around each other like strangers sharing a waiting room. Polite, distant, the argument suspended, not resolved. The puppies grew, eyes still closed, bodies still helpless, but growing. Luna nursed them, cleaned them, watched over them with a fierceness that Margaret recognized. Motherhood, the instinct older than language. On the 3rd day, Ruth Henderson came. She was 78 years old, a widow since 2019, the kind of woman who brought casseroles to every funeral and never forgot a birthday. She had known Margaret for 40 years, had stood beside her at Harold's grave. She brought a tuna casserole and stayed 3 hours. She also brought dog food, a 20-pound bag from the feed store. "Lord have mercy," she said when she saw the puppies. "Margaret Thompson, what have you gotten yourself into?" "I didn't get into anything. She found me." Ruth knelt beside the box where the puppies squirmed and nursed. Her eyes were wet. "My terrier died in September," she said quietly. "The house has been so quiet since—" "I know the feeling." Ruth looked at her. Something passed between them, the wordless understanding of women who had buried husbands and dreams and kept getting up anyway. "Can I hold one?" "Ask Luna. She's the mother." Ruth extended her hand toward Luna. The dog sniffed it. Considered. Then her tail moved. Ruth picked up the smallest puppy, the one who had almost died, and cradled her against her chest. "She's a fighter," Ruth said. "She had to be." Nathan watched from the kitchen doorway. Margaret saw his face, the confusion, the discomfort. He did not understand this. The casseroles, the sitting, the holding of puppies while the world waited outside. He came from Seattle, from efficiency, from problems that had solutions. This was something else. On the 4th day, Frank Miller stopped by. 82 years old. Widower. He had not left his house in 3 months. People said he sat in Harold's chair, the first person besides Margaret to sit there since the funeral, and held a puppy in his lap for an hour. Did not speak. Did not need to. When he left, his eyes were different, lighter. On the 5th day, a young mother from Hickory Road brought her children, twin girls, 6 years old. They squealed over the puppies. Luna watched, calm, patient, let them pet her ears. The mother, Jennifer, her name was pulled Margaret aside. "My girls haven't stopped talking about this all week." Ruth posted photos on Facebook. She paused. "Mrs. Thompson, when the puppies are old enough, we have a barn. Plenty of space. We'd give one a good home." Margaret looked at the twins, kneeling beside Luna, giggling as the puppies licked their fingers. "We'll see," she said. "They need to stay with their mama at least 8 weeks. We'll see after that." That night, Margaret sat on the porch. The cold had broken 32 degrees, practically balmy after the blizzard. The stars were out for the first time in a week. Nathan appeared beside her, handed her a cup of coffee. Folgers, black. The coffee was bitter. She had never learned to make it the way Harold did. They sat in silence for a long time. "I don't understand," Nathan finally said. Understand what any of this, of the... He gestured toward the house, the puppies inside, the neighbors who had been coming and going for days. A week ago, you were alone. Now it's like I don't know. A community center. Margaret sipped her coffee, thought about the question. People need to be needed, she said. Ruth, Frank, Jennifer, they didn't come to see the puppies. They came because they were lonely. And the puppies gave them an excuse. Nathan was quiet. Is that why you kept her? He asked. Luna, because you were lonely. Margaret looked at the sky, the same stars Harold had taught Nathan to name. 30 years ago, Orion, the Big Dipper, the North Star. I kept her because she needed me, Margaret said, and because I needed to be needed. Nathan did not respond, but he stayed on the porch. And for the first time in 6 months, they watched the stars together. The peace did not last. On the 6th morning, Margaret woke to voices in the driveway. 2 voices, unfamiliar, arguing. She pulled on Harold's jacket, walked to the window. 2 cars sat behind Nathan's rental, a gray pickup, a white sedan. And on the porch, standing face to face with Nathan, were 2 people Margaret had never seen before. A man, late 20s, unshaven, angry. A woman, same age, arms crossed, defensive. Nathan's voice carried through the window, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The man's voice, that's our dog. We have papers. We're not leaving without her. Margaret's blood went cold. Behind her, Luna lifted her head, her ears flattened. A low whine rose from her throat. She knew those voices. Margaret pushed through the front door. The cold hit her face. The man on the porch turned, late 20s, unshaven. A jaw set hard with the kind of anger that came from being told no. Behind him, a woman stood near the white sedan. Same age, arms crossed tight against her chest. She would not look at the man, would not look at Margaret. Her eyes stayed fixed on the snow. Nathan stood between them and the door. His shoulders were rigid. His hands hung at his sides, fingers curled. Mom, he said without turning, go back inside. No. Margaret stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked beneath her weight. Who are you? The man turned to face her. Tyler, she would learn his name later, but right now he was just a stranger with too much certainty in his eyes. Ma'am, I think you have our dog. Your dog? Yeah, Luna, German Shepherd. We've been looking everywhere for her. Margaret's hands found the porch railing. The wood was rough, splintered. Harold had meant to sand it down. Where did you lose her? Tyler glanced at the woman by the sedan. Something passed between them, not understanding. Accusation. She got out, he said. Back in January. We've been searching ever since. Posted flyers. Called shelters. No, you didn't. His face shifted. The certainty flickered. I called every shelter in 3 counties, Margaret said. Her voice was flat, steady. I called the highway patrol. I called animal control in 4 different jurisdictions. Nobody was looking for a pregnant German Shepherd. Nobody filed a missing dog report. Nobody was searching for anything. The woman Megan, her name was uncrossed her arms, took a step forward. Look, there was a misunderstanding. We were going through a divorce. Things were complicated. We thought... You thought what? Silence. You thought someone else would deal with your problem. Margaret descended the porch steps. 1, 2. Her knees ached. She did not care. You drove her to a highway rest stop in January in a blizzard. You opened the door, and you pushed her out, and you drove away. Tyler's jaw tightened. That's not... She was pregnant. She walked miles in 18 below wind chill. Her paws were bleeding. She scratched at my door at 2 in the morning because she had nowhere else to go. We didn't know she was pregnant. You didn't care." The words hung in the frozen air. Tyler's hands curled into fists at his sides. Behind him, Megan had gone pale. "I have papers," Tyler said. His voice had changed. Harder now, the pretense of concern stripped away. "Adoption records, vaccination history. She's legally my dog. I can call the sheriff right now and have her removed." Margaret looked at him. Really looked. Saw the tension in his shoulders, the calculation in his eyes. "Why now?" she asked. "What? You threw her away 2 months ago. Why do you want her back now?" Tyler did not answer, but Margaret understood. Ruth's Facebook post, the photos of 7 puppies, German Shepherd puppies sold for $800 each. More for purebreds with papers. Tyler had done the math. "The puppies," Margaret said. "You're here for the puppies." Tyler's silence was confirmation enough. "Get off my property." "You can't." "I said, get off my property." Nathan stepped forward, put himself between Tyler and the porch steps. "You heard her." Tyler's eyes narrowed. "This is between me and the old lady." "No, it's not." Nathan's voice was quiet, controlled, the voice of a man who had spent 20 years in conference rooms, negotiating with people who thought volume meant power. "You're on private property. You've been asked to leave. If you don't leave in the next 30 seconds, I'm calling the police." "Call them. I have legal documentation. That dog belongs to me. You abandoned her 2 months ago. In Minnesota. That's abandonment. You don't have a legal leg to stand on." Nathan pulled out his phone. "But let's say you try anyway. Let's say you file a claim. Here's what happens next." He held up the phone. "Camera app open. I take pictures of you, right now, standing on my mother's property, trying to intimidate a 71-year-old woman. Then I post them on every local Facebook group in the county. I tag the Pioneer Press. I tag the Star Tribune. I tag every German Shepherd rescue organization in the Midwest." His thumb hovered over the screen. "Couple abandons pregnant dog on highway, returns 2 months later to claim puppies for profit." That's a good headline. You want to see it on the 6 o'clock news, you want your names attached to that story. Tyler's face went red. A vein pulsed in his temple. Behind him, Megan spoke for the first time since Margaret had come outside. "Tyler, let's just go." "Shut up." "Tyler." "I said shut up." He turned back to Nathan. They stood inches apart now. Nathan was taller, but Tyler was younger, angrier, the kind of anger that made men do stupid things. Then the screen door opened. Luna stood in the doorway. Her ears were flat against her skull, her body pressed backward into the doorframe, as if she could disappear into the wood. A sound rose from her throat. Not a growl, not a bark, a whine. High. Thin. Terrified. Margaret had seen abused animals before, had seen the way they folded in on themselves when the person who hurt them came back, had seen the trembling, the cowering, the desperate need to be small and invisible. Luna was not protecting her puppies. She was trying to hide. Tyler turned at the sound. His face changed loss, recognition, something that might have been shame, buried deep. "Luna," he said. "Come here, girl. It's okay." Luna backed up, her crooked rear leg buckled. She caught herself against the doorframe. Tyler took a step toward the porch. Luna's whine became a cry. "She doesn't want to go with you," Margaret said. "She's confused. She just needs to. She's terrified." Margaret's voice cut through the cold air. "Look at her. Look at what you did to her." Tyler stopped. His hands hung at his sides. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered across his face. Margaret could not be sure what. Then it was gone. "This isn't over," he said. "I'll get a lawyer. I'll file a claim." "Do it." Nathan had not moved. His phone was still raised. "File whatever you want. But you're going to have to explain to a judge why a pregnant dog was found half frozen on a highway 2 months after you claim she got out. You're going to have to explain the healed rib fractures, the broken leg that was never set, the scars on her muzzle." He paused. "You want that conversation? I'll make sure the whole county is listening." Tyler stared at him. The anger was still there, coiled, waiting. But something else was there too. The recognition of a fight he could not win. Not here. Not today. He turned, walked to his truck, did not look at Megan. She stood by her sedan, arms wrapped around herself, watching him go. Then she looked at Margaret, at Luna, still trembling in the doorway. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't want to leave her. He said someone would find her. He said she'd be fine." Margaret did not respond. Megan got in her car, started the engine, drove away. Tyler's truck followed. The sound of gravel faded into the distance. Silence. Nathan stood on the porch steps, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. Margaret could see the adrenaline coursing through him, the aftermath of a confrontation he had never expected to have. She climbed the steps, stood beside him. Luna remained in the doorway, pressed against the frame, still trembling. "Nathan," Margaret said. He shook his head. "Nathan, don't." His voice cracked. "Just don't." He walked past her, into the house. The screen door banged shut behind him. Margaret stood alone on the porch. The cold seeped through Harold's jacket. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of orange and pink. She looked at Luna. The dog looked back. Brown eyes, exhausted and afraid and still, somehow trusting. "It's okay," Margaret said. "They're gone. They're not coming back." But as she said it, she thought of Nathan's face, the way he had defended her, the way he had stood between her and a stranger's anger, and then the way he had walked away. The crack in his voice. Something was breaking inside her son, and Margaret did not know if she could fix it. Nathan did not come out of his room that night. Margaret heard him through the door, the creak of the bed frame, the rhythm of pacing. At one point, a sound that might have been something breaking a glass. Maybe, or something thrown against the wall. She did not knock, did not ask if he was okay. She sat in Harold's chair. Luna lay at her feet, the puppies nursed in their box by the wood stove. The house settled into silence. She found him on the back porch at 2 a.m. The temperature had dropped again, single digits. His breath fogged in the darkness. He sat on the top step. No jacket, no gloves, arms wrapped around his knees like a child. Margaret stood in the doorway, watched him. His shoulders were shaking. She went back inside, got Harold's Carhartt from the hook, walked out onto the porch and draped it over his shoulders without speaking. He did not look up. She sat down beside him. The cold bit through her robe. Her joints screamed. She ignored them. They sat in silence for a long time. "I wasn't going to come back." His voice was hoarse, wrecked. "After the funeral," he continued, "I told myself I'd visit every month, check on you, make sure you were okay." A pause. His breath hitched. "Then it was every other month. Then I stopped calling on Sundays. Then I stopped thinking about it at all." Margaret did not speak. "I told myself you needed space, that you wanted to be alone. That calling would just remind you of Dad. And that wasn't fair to you." He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "But that was a lie. I knew it was a lie, even when I was telling it to myself. The stars were out. The same stars Harold had taught Nathan to name. The same sky they had watched together 1,000 times. The truth is, I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to see this house. I didn't want to sit in the kitchen where Dad used to make coffee. I didn't want to look at his chair. I didn't want to... His voice cracked. I didn't want to feel it. Any of it. He turned to look at her. His face was wet. His eyes were red. I was relieved, Mom. When you stopped calling, when you stopped asking me to visit, I was relieved. The word came out like something torn, because it meant I didn't have to feel guilty anymore. It meant I could pretend everything was fine, that you were fine, that I was a good son who just happened to be busy. Margaret's hands curled in her lap. The nursing home, Nathan said. You want to know why I picked it? Why I spent 3 weeks researching facilities and costs and ratings? She waited, because I wanted the problem to go away. He was not looking at her now. His eyes were fixed on the snow, the darkness, the nothing. I wanted to pay someone else to take care of you, to check on you, to make sure you were eating and taking your pills and not falling down the stairs. I wanted to write a check every month and feel like a good son without actually having to be one. His voice broke completely. I'm no different than them. Tyler and Megan. I looked at you the same way they looked at that dog. Like a problem, like an inconvenience, like something to be solved. He put his head in his hands. They left her on a highway. I was going to leave you in a facility. What's the difference? What's the actual difference? Margaret sat very still. The cold had seeped through her robe, her nightgown, into her bones. She could not feel her feet, could not feel much of anything. Her son was crying on the porch steps. 44 years old, successful, educated. And right now, he looked exactly like the 5-year-old who had broken her grandmother's vase and stood in the hallway, waiting for punishment, too ashamed to speak. She could comfort him, tell him it was okay, tell him she understood, tell him she forgave him, but she was tired of making things easier. You want to know what hurt the most, she said. He looked up. It wasn't the brochure. It wasn't the realtor. It wasn't you wanting to sell the house. Her voice was quiet, steady, the voice of a woman who had spent 6 months in the dark, learning to live without hope. It was that you never asked. Nathan's face crumpled. 40 years, Margaret said. 40 years in this house. I raised you in the back bedroom. I taught you to walk in this kitchen. I held your father's hand while he died right there, in the room where you were born. And you looked at all of that and saw square footage, listing prices, a good market. Mom, you never once asked if I wanted to stay. Her voice did not waver, did not rise. You never once asked what this house meant to me. You just decided. You and your spreadsheets and your brochures. You decided what was best for me without ever asking what I wanted. Nathan's mouth opened, closed. I'm 71 years old. Nathan, I've buried my husband, I've buried my parents, I've buried 2 brothers and more friends than I can count. I know I'm old. I know I forget things. I know I'm not the woman I used to be. She paused. But I am still here. I am still capable of deciding my own life. And you took that away from me. You took the one thing I had left. The words hung in the frozen air. Nathan sat on the porch steps, his father's jacket draped over his shoulders, his face streaked with tears. He looked small, diminished, like something had collapsed inside him. I don't know how to fix this, he whispered. Neither do I. They sat in the cold. The stars wheeled overhead. Inside. Luna lifted her head, listening, and somewhere in the darkness, A car engine started. Headlights swept across the snow. Margaret turned, looked toward the road. A gray pickup truck sat at the end of the driveway, engine idling, lights on. Tyler had come back. The truck sat at the end of the driveway, engine running, headlights cutting through the darkness. Nathan stood. The Carhartt jacket fell from his shoulders. "Stay here," he said. "Nathan!" But he was already moving. Down the porch steps, across the yard. His feet punched through the crusty snow. He did not look back. Margaret stood on the porch, her robe thin against the cold, watching her son walk toward a stranger's anger. The truck door opened. Tyler stepped out. They stood 10 feet apart, breath fogging, fists at their sides. Margaret could not hear what they said. The wind carried the words away, but she saw Nathan's posture change, saw his shoulders drop, saw his hands open, palms out. Tyler was shouting now, gesturing at the house, at Margaret, at everything. Nathan did not shout back. He stood there. Let Tyler rage. Let the words hit him like stones. Then something shifted. Tyler stopped mid-sentence. His hand fell to his side. He looked at Nathan, really looked, and something passed between them. Two men standing in the snow at 2 a.m., both wrecked by their own failures. Tyler got back in his truck. The headlights swung away. The engine faded into the distance. He did not come back. Nathan walked back to the house slowly. His shoulders were bent. His feet dragged. Margaret waited on the porch. "What did you say to him?" Nathan climbed the steps, sat down heavily. His face was gray in the darkness. The truth, which was, he was quiet for a long moment. "I told him I understood, that I knew what it was like to throw someone away because keeping them was too hard, that I'd spent 6 months doing the same thing to you." His voice was hoarse, empty. "I told him the dog wasn't going to fix whatever was broken inside him, that taking her back wouldn't make him a good person, that he'd have to find another way to live with himself." Margaret sat down beside him. "And he listened. I don't know if he listened, but he heard me. Maybe because I wasn't yelling. Maybe because he could tell I meant it." Nathan stared at the snow. "Maybe because he could see I was talking about myself as much as him." The screen door creaked behind them. Luna stood in the doorway. She looked at Nathan, at Margaret. Then she limped forward, her crooked leg dragging, and lowered herself between them on the porch. Her body was warm against Margaret's leg, against Nathan's. She did not rest her head on either of them. She simply lay there, facing outward, watching the darkness, guarding. Nathan looked down at her. His hand moved, hesitated, then came to rest on Luna's back. The dog did not flinch. "She doesn't trust me," he said. "She's learning. How long does that take?" "As long as it takes." They sat in silence. The cold had lost its edge, or maybe Margaret had stopped feeling it. "I'm not selling the house," Nathan said. Margaret turned to look at him. "I called the realtor yesterday. Before Tyler came back the first time, I told him to cancel." "Nathan, you don't have to—" "Yeah, I do." He met her eyes. His face was still wet, still wrecked, but something had shifted behind his eyes, something that looked almost like clarity. "I spent the last week watching you, the way you took care of Luna, the way you sat up all night when the puppies came, the way Ruth and Frank and Jennifer came over, and you had them laughing in the kitchen like Dad used to." Margaret did not speak. "You don't need a nursing home. Mom, you don't need me to fix your life." He swallowed hard. "You just needed someone to show up. And I didn't, for 6 months. I didn't." Luna's ear twitched, listening. "I can't undo that," Nathan continued. "I can't take back the phone calls I didn't make, the visits I canceled, The way I treated you like a problem instead of my mother." His voice cracked. "But I can do better. Starting now." Margaret's hands were shaking. She pressed them together in her lap. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm coming back. Once a month. Not to check on you to visit. To sit on this porch and remember why I used to love this place." He paused. "To be your son again. If you'll let me." The words hung in the cold air. Margaret thought of Harold, the way he used to sit on this porch, watching the stars, talking about nothing. The way he would reach for her hand without looking, like it was the most natural thing in the world. She reached for Nathan's hand. He startled, looked down. Then his fingers closed around hers. They sat there, mother and son, holding hands on a frozen porch at 3 a.m. Luna lay between them. The stars wheeled overhead. "I didn't know how to grieve him," Nathan said quietly. "Dad, I didn't know how to miss him without drowning. So I just stopped. Stopped feeling. Stopped coming back. Stopped being your son. You never stopped being my son. I stopped acting like one." "Yes." Margaret's grip tightened on his hand. "You did, but you're here now." Nathan was crying again, quietly this time, the kind of crying that came from somewhere deep from the place where all the things he had refused to feel had been waiting. Luna lifted her head, looked at him. Then, slowly, she rested her muzzle on his knee. Nathan's breath caught. "She's never done that before," Margaret said softly. "Not to anyone but me." Nathan stroked Luna's head. His hand was trembling. "She knows," Margaret said. "Dogs always know." "Know what?" "When someone's ready to be different." The sky was lightening in the east, gray becoming pink, becoming gold. The first sunrise Nathan had watched from this porch in 15 years. Margaret looked at her son, saw the boy he had been, the man he had become, the man he was trying to be. "I love you," she said, "even when you're a fool." He laughed. It was a broken sound, wet and ragged, but it was real. "I love you too, Mom." Luna's tail moved. Once, twice. Inside. One of the puppies began to cry. Then another. The morning feeding was due. Margaret pushed herself to her feet. Her body ached. Her eyes burned. But something inside her felt different. Lighter. "Come on," she said. "Help me feed them." Nathan stood, wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I don't know how." "Then I'll teach you." They walked inside together. Luna followed, her crooked leg dragging, her eyes never leaving Nathan's back. The sun rose over Maple Ridge Road, and for the first time in 6 months, the house felt like a beginning instead of an ending. 8 weeks later, the puppies found their homes. Ruth Henderson came on a Tuesday morning. She wore her church coat and carried a basket lined with an old quilt. "I've been thinking about names," she said, kneeling beside the whelping box. The largest puppy, the dark sable male. The firstborn climbed into her lap. "My Walter always wanted a dog named after someone important, someone worth remembering." Margaret watched Ruth's weathered hands stroke the puppy's fur. "I'm going to call him Harold," Ruth said quietly, "if that's all right with you." Margaret's throat tightened. She nodded. Ruth left with Harold tucked inside her coat, his nose poking out near her collar. She was crying. She did not try to hide it. The twins from Hickory Road came that afternoon with their mother Jennifer. They had drawn pictures, crayon portraits of the puppies they wanted, labeled in crooked letters Daisy and Pepper. Luna watched them take 2 females from the box. Her tail moved once. She understood. Frank Miller arrived the next day, 82 years old. He had not smiled since Betty died. He sat in the chair by the window and held a male puppy against his chest for an hour. Did not speak. Did not need to. "Buddy," he said finally. "That's what I'll call him." He walked out with the puppy cradled in his arms. His back was straighter than Margaret had seen in months. Dr. Eleanor Warren kept one female for the clinic. "Good temperament," she said. "Calm around nervous animals. She'll be useful." But Margaret saw the way Eleanor held the puppy, saw the softness in her eyes. Useful had nothing to do with it. That left one, the runt, the smallest, the one who had stopped breathing on the living room floor, who had come back only because Margaret refused to stop trying. Nathan sat on the floor with her in his lap. She was 8 weeks old now, eyes bright, ears perked. She watched everything with an intensity that reminded Margaret of someone she could not quite name. "I want to take her," Nathan said. "Back to Seattle, if that's okay." Margaret lowered herself into the chair beside him. Her knees protested less than they used to, or maybe she had stopped noticing. "What will you name her?" Nathan stroked the puppy's head. His hands were gentler now, slower. "Maple," he said. "For the road." Margaret looked at the doorframe. The height marks, Nathan at 5, 8, 12, 16, the last measurement before he stopped, letting her chart his growth. "Your father would have liked that." "I know." Luna lay by the wood stove, watching them. Her belly was softer now, her ribs less visible. The frostbite on her ears was healing, the black had faded to pink, new fur growing at the edges. The crooked rear legs still dragged, but she had learned to compensate, had learned to keep moving. She was not the same dog who had scratched at the door 10 weeks ago. Neither was Margaret the same woman who had opened it. The airport was 40 minutes away. Small regional terminal, 3 gates, a coffee shop that closed at noon. Nathan stood at the security checkpoint, Maple's travel crate in one hand, his boarding pass in the other. 3 weeks, he said. "Not 4. I mean it this time." "I know you do." They stood there, awkward, 44 years of history between them, most of it unspoken. "Mom," Nathan set down the crate. "Thank you." "For what?" "For opening the door, for Luna, for—" He stopped, swallowed. "For not giving up on me." Margaret stepped forward, wrapped her arms around her son. He stiffened. Then his arms came up, circled her back, pulled her close. They held each other in the middle of a small-town airport while travelers walked past and the announcements droned overhead. Margaret pressed her face against his shoulder. He smelled like coffee and laundry detergent and something else, something that reminded her of Harold. "I love you," she said, "even when you're a fool." He laughed against her hair. "I love you too, Mom." Maple whined in her crate. Nathan pulled back, wiped his eyes, picked up the crate. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. He walked through security, turned once, at the corner, and raised his hand. Margaret raised hers back. Then he was gone. Evening. Margaret sat in the chair by the window. Luna lay at her feet, head on her paws, eyes half closed. The bird feeder outside was full. Margaret had filled it that morning. The cardinals had started coming back, 2 males, bright red against the last patches of snow, fighting over seeds the way they did every spring. On the kitchen table a calendar, Nathan's next visit circled in red, Ruth's birthday in March, Luna's checkup in 2 weeks, Frank's invitation to Sunday dinner. The house was quiet, but it was not empty. Margaret looked down at Luna. The dog's breathing was slow, steady, content. "You know," Margaret said, "Harold would have liked you. He always said the best dogs were the ones who found you, not the other way around." Luna's ear twitched. Outside, the last light faded from the sky, the field stretched out toward the horizon, brown and white, and waiting for spring. Margaret thought about doors, the one she had almost kept closed, the one she had opened instead. The fire popped in the wood stove. Luna sighed. Margaret closed her eyes. 40 years in this house, 40 years of living, and now, somehow, there was tomorrow. Some stories leave a quiet weight behind when they end. This one carried something tender, the scratch at a door. The choice to open it. The long and difficult work of learning to stay. Perhaps it stirred something familiar in you. Perhaps it did not. Either way, it is yours now to hold however feels right. Many of us have stood on one side of a door or the other. Many of us have been the one who left, or the one who was left. Some of us have carried guilt we could not name. Some of us have waited for someone to show up, and they never did. Some of us have been given second chances we were not sure we deserved. These things do not need to be resolved tonight. They do not need to be understood or fixed or made into something neat. It is all right to let them rest, just as they are. It is enough to have felt them, even briefly, even from a distance. The story is finished now. The fire is banked. The house is quiet. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening.